This is your Thursday Fantasy PSA. Remember to take all your Thursday night players out of your flex spot. Thank you and have a nice week. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Rugby with Pads. Today is your Thursday preview show where we look at players who are hot and those who are not based on a particular theme of the week. And this week's theme is Now We Know. A little bit more anyway. Week one was an exercise in understanding what we don't know currently. And week two is maybe exercising some things that we've started to learn, but we just need to, ratify our hypothesis. But we'll go into that shortly. Obviously, you've just heard, hopefully, the klaxon sound. Get your Thursday night players out of your flex spots. I can't say it more enough, but when lots of things happen and injuries happen in training, holdouts at this early in the year, having players in your flex spot when they're playing on a Thursday, just get them out there. It gives you a much better chance of survival should the worst happen. But before we get into the fun stuff, let's take a quick look at how we did last week. Now, hopefully you guys listen to this show because of my entertaining and thoroughly enjoyable personality, but some of you might listen to it for a bit of fantasy advice. And I like to stay honest and see how we did. Now, last week was new beginnings, so it was definitely going to be a long shot, and I take shots on players who I think are going to be good, but not necessarily the superstars, so I don't play it safe. And likewise, sometimes I make assertions on players who I think are going to be naff, who haven't shown a history of being naff based on the circumstances. Now, let's see who we had in the list here. We had in the positive projection lineup in our hot players, we had Jameer Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Calvin Ridley, Jordan Love, DJ Moore, Waller, and Aaron Rodgers. Now, I was wrong on more than I was right here. Jameer Gibbs was a bit meh, but I think he showed a huge amount of promise. Real life football terms, I think he's going to be great. He just didn't get the volume. And I think they're going to work him in more. Maybe not this week, but I think maybe over the next couple, we'll see him gradually worked in more as they see how much better of a player he really, truly could be than what they have in David Montgomery. I think they also want to protect their asset as well. He is a slighter bodied guy, so they really want to use him when they need to use him. Bijan Robinson definitely showed that he is him. Calvin Ridley and Jordan Love went above expectations. I was really happy with that. Rodgers we're not going to talk about because he's got an injury, and I had too many shares of him to... It's still raw, guys. It's still very much raw for me, and I'm not happy about it. I've made some poor decisions in reaction to that. So don't do what I did do. Put him on IR. Put him wherever you need to. Just just retune if you've got him. Waller and DJ Moore did not live up to expectation. I think DJ Moore showed some spark in some of his play, but just didn't have the service. I think it was just not the game set up for him. And they were against a really good Packers D, who I did not think were going to be nearly that good. So that's something we've learned as well. And Waller didn't really live it up to expectation, but he was one of the brighter sparks on a really rubbish team. On the negative side, on our not so hot players, we had Allen Robinson, Derek Carr, CJ Stroud, Jimmy G, DeAndre Swift, or any of the running backs over there in Eagles land, JSN and Quentin Johnson. I think for the rookies, JSN and Quentin Johnson, CJ Stroud, they're all naff. So I think I got that one right. Allen Robinson was also naff, but that was to be expected. And as were all of the running backs over there in Philadelphia. None of them were really serviceable. DeAndre Swift was basically invisible. Rashad Penny was injured. Boston Scott, and I think, was it Kenny Gainwell was probably the bright spark, and I think he was quite high on waivers this week in the bidding process. So yeah, we got that right. Jimmy G was okay, serviceable. Derek Carr was serviceable. He wasn't as bad as I played him out. So, I gave myself a pretty even score here. 9 out of 13. That's 69% for those of you counting. Nice. Oh, God, I feel so crass saying that. Anyway, let's move on to our week 2 projections. And we have a humongous slate of games. And I've done a couple more players this week. So let's go through our positive projections here. I've started out with a player who's playing early on the Sunday in the Green Bay versus Atlanta game. I've gone for Romeo Dobbs. I really liked him. And the reason that I've gone for him was he seemed to be the go-to reception guy. He was also, he plays a bit shallower than Christian Watson or some of the other players that they have over there. And I think with Jesse Bates lurking, the Atlanta secondary looked good. With Jesse Bates lurking there, I think Romeo Dobbs might be the easy read, and I think he's going to be PPR relevant this week against Atlanta defense, who didn't look poor, but didn't look great. But when they needed to, they turned it on. So he's one of my first guys, but I think maybe you've got to be concerned by him a little bit because he did report questionable, but they don't have any replacements really. Their wide receiver depth is really thin. So I think he'll play regardless. And if you're playing in the slot, hopefully he'll go down in a Tyler Lockett fashion and not get hit. Dalton Kincaid is up next. I don't buy the rookie hype on tight ends, but he showed he was a bit of a baller, and I really like him. They're using him more as a wide receiver. They're going to be throwing it more. They've showed they still haven't got much of a running game over there in Buffalo, and I think against Las Vegas, who have a crippled and poor secondary and linebacking core as well, I think Kincaid is your guy. They do have a good pass rush over in Vegas with obviously Max Crosby there. So I think you're going to see a lot of dump offs to the tight end, and that's where Dalton Kincaid will apply his trade. So yeah, some good starts there from some rookies and some second year players there that I think are going to be coming out of the blocks hot there. But let's move on to a player who I don't think is going to be that great, and it's going to be the first game of the week. It's going to be playing tonight. Thursday night. Kirk Cousins typically doesn't like Mondays. He doesn't like Monday primetime games, but this is another primetime game, and he's going up against a Philadelphia Eagles team who look good. Kirk Cousins turned it on for the first half of last week and then was abjectly poor. I don't know what happened, but I am not buying it. And I think he is just afraid of primetime spotlight games. Despite I've been watching quarterback, and I really like Kirk Cousins now. It's weird. I just don't like him in this game against a Philadelphia D who did score a pick six, who do look dangerous. Darius Slay. Is it Darius Slay? Yes. Slay. He is so good, and I'm really worried. And that Georgia front line, effectively, wow, they just bulldoze over people against a Minnesota team who I don't think have the best O line. Kirk Cousins is going to be throwing out a lot of sacks. He could be intercepted and sacked. There are lots of things that could happen there. And there's a player who I think we know a bit about, but I think it's more around the situation over in Baltimore. Baltimore obviously lost J.K. Dobbins probably to a season-ending ACL after he just came back off an Achilles, or is it the other way around? Either way, Justice Hill was brought in and got some red zone touches, great, but I don't think he's the player. I mentioned this in the waivers show. I think the player over there is going to be Gus Edwards based on volume. I think Justice Hill just got the opportunities this week. They're bringing in Melvin Gordon, who is more of a Justice Hill plus kind of guy. And as a veteran, I think he might have a bit more about him than Justice Hill in this team. So they're going to rotate, and I just don't like Justice Hill. I think people are going to buy on that spike week based on those touchdowns. That's something I want to avoid, especially against a Cincinnati defense who are going to want to prove a point after getting embarrassed against the Browns in another in-division game. That's crazy. The AFC North is going to be competitive. I'm loving it. Let's stick in the North, though, but in the NFC North. David Montgomery is going to be a hot start for me this week. I really like him. For the same reason I like Gibbs. I just think they're a good running team. The Lions. I just really like them. And I think for this week, maybe not next week, I think Montgomery is probably going to be the lead back, especially when they're looking to pound it short and in red zone coverage, red zone opportunities. It doesn't mean I don't think Gibbs will get his. I think that Gibbs will be a good start this week. I just think based on the expectation that Gibbs is going to be a good start, everyone thinks he's going to be great. He's a first round rookie running back. I think Montgomery is going to surprise and probably play above his projected totals this week. So he is there, and I think it's largely because of the touchdown upside. I think Montgomery is going to be a really interesting play. And another player who I thought was going to be interesting last week, he's going to play at home this week against the Chicago Bears. It was, of course, Chris Godwin. Now, I could have gone. You know what? I could have gone Mike Evans. I could have gone Chris Godwin. I'm denied between the two. I think they're both good starts, but I think Chris Godwin will surprise this week and be the guy. Mike Evans was the guy when they had to chase the game against the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think they're going to have to chase the game nearly as much against Chicago, who I still think are a work in progress. I like Chicago a lot. I like Justin Fields a lot. I'm maybe souring on him a little bit early season, but I'm holding faith. I think Chris Godwin is going to be available more in short yardage options, and he's going to be similar in the way that I like Romeo Dobbs. I think he's going to be just available for them to throw to him. Whereas Mike Evans needs those chunk plays for him to be relevant. I don't think Godwin does as much, and I think he will be better than expected this week. And we'll do one more wide receiver out there in the hot section. I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna roll with Calvin Ridley once again. Who are Jacksonville playing? Jacksonville are playing Kansas City, who I don't think their defense is as vaunted as some people think, really. And Calvin Ridley is very much the alpha. I think they're going to have to throw it because Kansas City will put up points. Kelsey will be back. They're going to have to chase the game a little bit potentially, will Jacksonville. So we'll have to see how that comes out. But I think either way, Ridley is a wide receiver one. No doubt he's a stud, and I think he's going to have a bit of a stud game this week. But there are some pass catchers on the other side who I don't like as much. And I'm going to start with Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett, I love him. I really do love him. I want him to do well. I made a joke about him earlier saying he avoids hits, but he's going up against a Detroit Lions defense away in Detroit that are frisky. I don't think they're great. I think they're frisky. I think they might have lost someone in their secondary, but they've got a bit of a rolling crew over there anyway. Lockett, despite him playing, he didn't play well last week at all. I think he had a red zone or a touchdown catch that he dropped in coverage, which normally you would expect him to go up and get in those contested situations. I just think he's lost a little bit of an edge, and maybe that's his age showing. I think maybe we'll see what JSN has to come to the fore, because that pass, I believe, was right on the money. He just didn't muscle it out, and I think that's maybe what Lockett's going to be now. He's wanting to extend his career as long as possible. He's still got a decent contract. I think we're going to struggle to see him really give us enough spike weeks. I think against this Detroit team, I think both teams are going to try and shorten the game by running it a lot. I don't think we're going to see a huge amount of Lockett. Especially as I think Geno Smith probably needs to go to his guys, and his guy definitely seems like DK Metcalf, just to get back that confidence that he had after being ran down by Aaron Donald. For those of you who haven't caught it yet, go and look up Geno Smith, Aaron Donald. He goes, "Oh my God," as he sees the big number 99 behind me here, bearing down upon him, ready for the sack. It was an amazing piece, and I'm really glad I got to view that live. Another player who I think we know more about, but maybe know more about his fellow players, is another player from the NFC West, and they're going up against the San Francisco 49ers. They're going to be at home, but I just don't think Tyler Higbee is going to be the guy. Matthew Stafford passed it all the way around to all the young guys, and Higbee felt a bit left out in the cold. I think he got a couple of receptions. I think it was like 3 or 4 points on PPR, but I think what we're seeing from Higbee is he's turned into a supporting cast. He's sneaky old. I think he's like 29. And I just don't think he's part of the plan. I think the passing game is still built around Cup, which is now built around Puka and Tutu Atwell in relief, who I think were fantastic last week. And they're going up against the San Francisco defense, who have a mean linebacking core. I don't think Higbee stands a chance this week, so he is a definite fade for me. I'm going to come back to another player in a minute because I think it really speaks to a bit of a headline that I'm trying to give. I'm trying to give a bit of a hot take, so I'll come back, but we'll finish off our good players because, and then we'll end on a really low note, shall we? We're going to be looking at Anthony Richardson, and I think what we know is what we thought we were going to get. We got a very athletic guy who is good in the pocket, who's maybe a bit inaccurate, but he's the best rookie quarterback out there, and he's playing a very weak Houston defense. Are they away or at home? I can't remember on this one. They're away. They're in Houston, but I still think going on the road, that Colts team will do something. And I think they proved last week that they need a bit of an edge in the running game, which they're missing in JT. But Anthony Richardson is fantastic. I think he will be great for years to come. I wish I had more stock of him. If you got him in Dynasty, you are a very happy man or woman compared to some of your other compatriots who may have got CJ Stroud or Bryce Young in week 1. You might be thinking, not quite what I wanted. Another player at QB who I think is is what we think he should be. It's going to be Tua. And yes, they're going up against New England, who are a really good defense and who made life difficult for the Eagles last week. But I think Tua just has too many options. There is a bevy of pass catchers available to him. I don't think New England can take away both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, as well as all of the other kind of contributing pass catchers that are at his disposal. Sorry, there's a ghost at my door there. That was a bit weird, wasn't it? But I do think that Miami will come out on top, and I think Tua will continue to prove, maybe not quite as well as he did last week, but will continue to prove that he will be a threat this week. And we'll end our hot players with Nick Chubb. He's playing on Monday night against Pittsburgh. I think it's more the fact that Pittsburgh were in a disarray. The only two good players on defense. Well, no, actually, the only one good player on defense for Pittsburgh was TJ Watt, and Chubb is going to run away from him. I think it's his game. I think Pittsburgh are going to throw it away too much that they're just going to have to be chasing the game. I think this is a Chubb game through and through. I think the game script just speaks to him doing fantastic well. And this is not just me wish casting because I have him in a lot of spots here. Now let's finish off with the not so hot guys. We'll start off with a second year QB. No, let's start with a rookie QB, Bryce Young. I think what we know, not of him, but of his team, is that he hasn't potentially got the supporting cast around him. I don't think Adam Thielen has proven himself to be a number one. Hayden Hurst was the outlet, which we all expected. But Bryce Young, despite looking cool and calm and collected, even when he was under pressure, I just don't think he has the pieces around him. And I think that's going to bring him down this season. So I think that's what we know of him. And in a similar vein, I think we've learned quite a lot more about Sam Howell, where we saw him in a very small sample size before one game in week 17 or 18 last year. Sam Howell is basically Baker Mayfield with a lower draft grade. He's prone to mistakes, which we get. He's a raw guy. They came out 17-16 victors last week. They're going against the Denver D, who are going to stop them from scoring, who are going to be a bit more aggressive, I think, than what they saw against Arizona. And I think if he couldn't really get it done hugely well against Arizona, I think he's going to have some trouble against Denver. I think he's going to be exposed when he sees good defenses. And we'll look at two running backs to finish off, and this is probably we'll build to the headline act here, but Najee Harris, and I hate to say it, I don't like it this week. For all the reasons I like Chubb, is the reasons I don't like Najee Harris. And Najee Harris I still think is still trying to establish himself as being the guy. He's another he's another running back who is being eclipsed in expectations by a younger version and a younger talent behind him in Jalen Warren. I just don't like this week for Najee Harris for so many reasons, but I would be fading him. I think I have dropped him to my bench in my Dynasty League. It feels really bad because I like him as a player. I just don't think they have the supporting cast around him, and I think Matt Canada's offense is appalling. So I think that's what we really learned. Najee can be Najee of old, but just not under this offensive system. I don't think, unless they change something drastically, and I really hope they do soon because I like the Steelers a lot. And finally, we're going with someone who was probably in your top 3 in draft picks in redraft, and that is, of course, Austin Eckler, Mr. 101 for me for so many years. I didn't get any shares of him this year. I just don't like this week for Austin Eckler. I still think he'll have a good game. Not gonna lie, not gonna lie. The clickbait here is that Austin Eckler is going to be bad. He's not going to be bad. He will be eminently serviceable, and you would be happy to have him in your team. He's just not going to score 25. I just don't think that is in his range of outcomes. Tennessee defense are better than advertised. That they kept them in the game against the Saints offense, who were cooking at times last week. And they themselves are going to limit the game. And I think Los Angeles are looking to maybe become more of a north-south running team. And that's where you have players like Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller, who are bigger-bodied guys. Yes, Eckler broke out a massive run, which is a huge part of his score. But I think that was potentially like 17 points of his last week. But outside of that, he was a few points here, a few points there. Yeah, he was good. But I don't think he was what you needed him to be in terms of an actual game script. And that's why I worry a little bit. So I probably wouldn't be dropping him because you can't drop him to your bench. I just don't think you can. But I just don't think have the expectation that he's going to be the game winner that we all want him to be. So let's recap there. In my hot in the category in the now we know a bit more theme, we've got Romeo Dobbs, but just watch his injury concern, I think, is the question there. Dalton Kincaid, David Montgomery, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Anthony Richardson, Tua, and Nick Chubb. I think they're all going to have great games this week, and I really hope I do better on predicting the good games than the bad games this week. And in my not so much, in my negative projections here, I think we know a lot more about Kirk Cousins. I guess more of the same, really. Justice Hill, I think we've learned a bit about that scheme to know that he might be reliable week in, week out. And I don't think this is going to be his week. This could be a Gus week. It could be a Melvin Gordon week. We never know. Lockett, Higbee, Howell, Bryce Young, Najee Harris, and finally Eckler. Don't expect godlike form from him, but I wouldn't sit him. I just wouldn't maybe rest your entire week on him. That's your lot this week, guys. I will be back on Monday with the waivers show. I'm not going to look to record something additional for this Saturday. That I don't think there's enough content there yet to speak on a wider topic. But I hope you've enjoyed the slate of shows. I'm probably going to drop the league roundup show from my slate and just have it as part of either the Monday wrap up or this as a segment on the end, and maybe rotate through the home leagues over time, so you get a bit of a flavour without it having to be its own show. It was a lot more to produce than I expected, and just simply don't have the time, and I don't think it's going to add enough value to your experience if I have it on its own. So that's actually hear from me on Monday and then again on Thursday with this show, and I'll try and spool up a bit of a special for a Saturday coming up soon. But really hope you enjoyed this. As always, you can follow me at Rugby with Pads. If you want to support this show, go to www.rugbywithpads.com, and of course you can go to our store.rugbywithpads.com. I will be releasing new merch. I'm not wearing any merch today. I'm just wearing Rams stuff, older Rams stuff as well, going back to St. Louis days. But yeah, if you look out, I'll be doing some drops on Instagram and on Twitter. Love you to support this. The competition is still running as well in terms of memberships, so I will do another announcement and post around that. And for those of you in any leagues with me, I'm sure I'll pester you plenty over the coming days. But thank you so much for listening. As always, I will see you on the virtual gridiron.